As British citizens, we are all aware that our fundamental right to free speech is under serious threat. The ability to express our thoughts, opinions, and concerns openly, without fear of censorship or suppression, is a cornerstone of any truly democratic society. Yet in recent years, we have seen a disturbing shift in how speech is being policed, particularly on social media platforms. In the United States, there has been significant pushback against these threats to free expression, especially following the previous administration. Efforts are being made to ensure that American citizens are not silenced by big tech companies, government overreach, or media bias. Now, we are beginning to see similar conversations emerging in the UK and across Europe as well. The tide is turning. In today's video, we'll be reacting to a key member of Donald Trump's team as they expose and challenge what is happening in the United Kingdom and across Europe. Their insights shed light on the broader battle for free expression and the urgent need to push back against growing censorship. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Your support helps us continue these important discussions. Just a quick one to say we do have new One Keir t-shirts available on our website. Go to britishstand.com or check the link in the description. The new administration is turning its gaze on the rest of the world and calling out leaders, including ours, for the state of our country.
I heard his speech, and I tell you, you're talking about JD's speech, right?
Yes, sir.
I heard his speech, and he talked about freedom of speech, and I think it's true in Europe. It's losing. They're losing their wonderful right of freedom of speech. I see it. I mean, I thought he made a very good speech, actually, a very brilliant speech. Yeah. Europe has to be careful. And he talked about immigration. And Europe has a big immigration problem. Just take a look at what's happened with crime. Take a look at what's happening in various parts of Europe. I thought his speech was very well received, actually. I've heard very good remarks.
This is the first part of JD Vance's speech where he specifically calls out the UK.
And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, Free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
Following this, he spoke on mass migration. Have a watch of this.
I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. Today, almost 1 in 5 people living in this country moved here from abroad. That is, of course, an all-time high. It's a similar number, by the way, in the United States, also an all-time high. The number of immigrants who entered the EU from non-EU countries doubled between 2021 and 2022 alone, and of course it's gotten much higher since. And we know this situation, it didn't materialize in a vacuum. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city. And of course, I can't bring it up again without thinking about the terrible victims who had a beautiful winter day in Munich ruined. Our thoughts and prayers are with them and will remain with them. But why did this happen in the first place? It's a terrible story, but it's one we've heard way too many times in Europe and unfortunately too many times in the United States as well. An asylum seeker, often a young man in his mid-20s, already known to police, rams a car into a crowd and shatters a community. How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction? No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants.
What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments. In some other news, a man has avoided jail after throwing a brick while defending a mosque during last year's riots. Ibrahim Mir of Barnet Drive, Cobridge, threw the brick into the road where it hit a metal railing near Town Road in Hanley, Stoke-on-Trent. CCTV footage captured him wearing a balaclava near his mosque, according to Stoke-on-Trent Live. The footage showed him tossing the object aside, away from the public and police, before fleeing with a group of men. Mir turned himself in on September 28th, 56 days after the August 3rd riot, which followed murders in Southport. He later pleaded guilty to violent disorder and was sentenced to 20 months in prison, suspended for 2 years. Prosecutor Fiona Cortese noted that Mir, a university student, had been on bail since last month after surrendering nearly 5 months earlier. Defending Martin Blas said Mir had been law-abiding before the incident, was about to start his 3rd year at university, and had a part-time job. He also highlighted Mir's role in supporting his critically ill brother. Judge Graham Smith referenced the July 29th attack at a Southport dance school where 3 girls were murdered. Misinformation about the attacker's background fueled violent protests, including in Hanley. Addressing Mir, the judge said, "You were part of an opposing group. Protests and petitions are valid, but violence is not. You wore a balaclava, perhaps to hide your identity, but your involvement was limited. Given your good character and family responsibilities, I hope you move forward positively." Lastly, King Charles has revealed he has given up skiing, telling a Swiss worker during a visit to Middlesbrough that his skiing days are behind him. The 76-year-old monarch, currently undergoing weekly cancer treatment, made the remark while touring CAH Wind, the world's largest offshore wind turbine-based factory. A passionate skier for nearly 5 decades, Charles first learned the sport at 14 and made regular trips to the exclusive Swiss resort of Klosters, where cable cars were even named in his honor. His final planned ski trip was cancelled in 2023 to prevent injury ahead of his coronation. During the same visit, the king received a Valentine's Day card from a young girl who called him the best king ever. So, what are your thoughts on what we discussed in today's video? Let me know down in the comments. That brings us to the end of today's video. Hit the like and subscribe button for more British content. Oh, and don't forget to get your t-shirts at BritishStand.com. Link is in the description.